Hello. Now we will start our next part. In our previous part, we have understand about the what is the meaning and the definition of capital assets. And we have also discussed about the long-term capital assets and the short-term capital assets. Now this class in the continuation of such a previous class. And now we will determine the period of holding. Now we will understand how we will determine the period of holding, because on the basis of period of holding, we will classify the assets as long-term capital assets or as a short-term capital assets on the basis of period of holding. Normally, if the asset is held for the period of more than 36 months or for the period of more than 24 months or for the period of more than 12 months, then it will be considered as long-term capital assets. Then it will be considered as long-term capital assets. If it is held for the period up to 36 months, up to 24 months, up to 12 months, then it will be considered as short-term capital assets. So now we will start how we will determine the period of holding. How we will determine the period of holding. In determining period of holding of any of the capital assets by the assessee in the circumstances stated in clause 1, means clause 1 contain the different circumstances, and clause B determine which period will be considered when we will determine the period of holding, means from which period to which period will be considered as a period of holding. So now we will start our discussion on the determination of period of holding. Clause 1 is the circumstances, and the clause 2 period to be reckoned, period to be included, and the period to be excluded as the case may be. Number 1, where shares held by the company in liquidation. Where shares held in a company in the liquidation. So the period subsequent to the date of liquidation, the period subsequent to the date of liquidation of such company shall be excluded. Means the period subsequent to the date of liquidation will be excluded when we will computing the holding period, when we will determine the holding period. Is that when there is any share in a company, means there is a person, he held a share in a company in the liquidation, then the period subsequent to the date of liquidation of the company will be excluded when we will determine or when we will calculate the holding period. Number 2, where assets become the property of an assessee by the virtue of section 49 subsection 1, is that if there is any property of any person, the property is of another person, and such property is become the property of any other person by the virtue of section 49 subsection 1. We will discuss in our next class or in our another class. Section 49 subsection 1 is that if there is any property which is related to the another person, and such property is become the, it will become the property of the assessee by the virtue of section 49, by the virtue of section 49 subsection 1, then the period for which capital assets was held by the previous owner shall be included. Then the period for which the previous owner held such asset, the period for which the previous owner held such asset will also be included when we will compute the holding period. When we will compute the holding period. Instead, for the example, there is a person Ram, he has a property. He has a property. And he purchased such property on 1st January 2009. He purchased it on 1st January 2009. Now, such property transfer to Sohan under section or as per section 49 49 subsection 1 means it is transferred or it is transferred to Sohan under section 49 subsection 1. So when if Sohan wants to transfer transfer such assets or such property such assets, then such property on first or on 31st December 2016. So in this case the holding period will be holding period holding period will be holding period will be from 1st January 2019 2000 sorry 9 to 31st December 2016. The holding period will be from 2019 to 2016 because when there is any property which is transferred or when there is any property which is become the property of any other person by the virtue of section 49 subsection 1, then the period of previous owner then the period for such capital asset which is held by the previous owner will also be included. When we will calculate the holding period, then the period for which such assets is held by the previous owner will also be included. Number 3, where inventory of the business is converted into or treated as capital assets by the assessee. Well, there is a inventory and such inventory is converted by the person as capital assets. There is a person, he deals in the furniture and fixtures. Now he wants to convert his stock into the capital assets. Means now he doesn't want to perform the business activity in such furniture and fixtures, and the restock of the furniture and fixtures he want to convert it as a capital asset. So the period from the date of conversion or treated as capital assets should be considered. Means the date from when it is considered as capital assets will be considered as period of holding. Means for the example, there is a person Mohan, he is the dealer and he sell building buildings or flats. He sell the building and flats. Now he wants to close his business and he convert such building and he convert these buildings into stock and into capital assets. So the date means he convert it on 1st 4 2020. So the holding period will be start the holding period from 1st 4 2020 means the holding period will be start from 1st 4 2020. The holding period will be start from 1st 4 2020. When there is any person who want to convert their stock and trade in the capital assets, then the period when he converts such a stock and trade into the capital assets will be considered as the holding period, and from that day it will be considered as capital assets. Next, where shares in an Indian company, amalgamated company, become the property of the assessee in the name of share which is held by him in the amalgamated company at the time of transfer under section 47 subsection 7. is that when there is a Indian company become the property of the assessee in the lieu of share held by him in the amalgamating company. Just like for the example, there is a person, Sohan, and he has a share of ABC company. He has a share of ABC company. Now there is the amalgamation. There is the amalgamation, and ABC amalgamate into BCD company. It is amalgamate into BCD company. Mr. A, Mr. Sohan, he has a share of ABC company. Now, such ABC company is amalgamated with the BCD company. It is amalgamated with the BCD company. Now, after the amalgamation, Sohan becomes the shareholder of BCD company. He will become the shareholder of BCD company. He will become the BCD company. So, in this case, the holding period includes, means the period for which the shares were held by the assessee in the amalgamated company shall be included. Means if he held the share in ABC company from 2000 1st 4 2000 AD and the amalgamation taken place. For the example, the amalgamation taken place 31st March 2019. Then the holding period will include holding period include from 1st April 2018 to 31st March 2020 means such 1 year include such 2 years will be included when we will calculate the holding period. When we will calculate the holding period, the period before such amalgamation will also be included. The period for which the share held by the assessee into the amalgamating company means he held the share in the amalgamating company for the period of 2 years. So these 2 years will also be included when we will compute the holding period. Next is where the share or any other security is subscribed by the assessee on the basis of right to subscribe to any share or security or by the person in whose favor such right is renounced by the assessee, is that when there is any share or when there is any security which is subscribed by the assessee as a right issue or these right issue is transferred by him to the any person means all these shares are subscribed by the person in whose name the right is renounced. In this case, the period from the date of allotment of such share or security shall be reckoned. The period from the date of allotment of these right share or from the date of allotment of these security shall be reckoned. Is that if there is any person, he subscribed the right shares, he subscribed the right security, then the period from the date of allotment of such right share will be reckoned. It shall be reckoned. Next, where the right to subscribe of any share or any security which is reckoned in the favor of any other person, if the right share is announced by the company, and the shareholder of such company is eligible to subscribe this right share, he renounce it in the favor of any other person. Then the period from the date of offer of such right issue by the company or institution shall be reckoned. Then the period from the date of offer by the company or institution shall be reckoned. Is that for the example, there is a company ABC and such company announce right issue. The company announced right issue. Mr. Mohan, he is the shareholder in ABC. Mr. Mohan, he is a shareholder in ABC company, and he renounced he renounced such a right issue to Ram. To Ram. Ram subscribe such a right issue. Mr. Ram, he subscribed such a right issue. So in this case, for the example, it is announced on 1st 4 2010, from 1st 4 2010. Then the period from the date of offer of such right issue by the company or institute shall be reckoned, means the period of 1st 4 2010 to the subscription period will be reckoned. Such period will be reckoned when we will calculate the holding period. When we will calculate the holding period, then such period will be reckoned. Sorry. Such period will be reckoned. Next, where any financial assets is allotted without any payment. When there is any financial assets is allotted without any payment and on the basis of holding of other financial assets, means there is any allotment of a financial assets which is made by the person without any payment, and it is made on the basis of any other financial assets, just like bonus share. Bonus shares are issued free of cost on the basis of the number of share which is held by the shareholder. So in this case, the period from the date of allotment of such financial asset shall be reckoned. The period from the date of allotment of such financial asset will be reckoned. It shall be reckoned. Next, where shares in an Indian company being a resulting company become the property of the assessee in the consideration of demerger, is that when there is a demerger taken place between the two companies. The demerger is taken place between the two companies and the resulting company is an Indian company. Now, the shareholder of the another company will be, means the shareholder of the demerged company, he will become the shareholder of such a resulting company. So the of period in which he held the share in the demerged company will also be included, means the period for which the shares are held by such assessee in the demerged company will also be included when we will compute the holding period. Is that for the example, Mr. Ram, he is the shareholder in XYZ company. He is the shareholder in XYZ company. Now, XYZ company is demerged into by a B company. Now, Ram become the shareholder of Buy B and Company. He hold these share from 1st January 2000. And he become the shareholder of such company from 1st January 2060 2021. So the holding period will be start, means when we will calculate the holding period, then the holding period will be start from 1st April 20. It will be start from 1st April 2020, mean such period will also be included. The next, where trading or the clearing right of the recognized stock action in India is acquired by a person pursuant to demutualization or corporation of the recognized stock exchange in India as referred to section 47 subsection 10, subsection 30 is that when the trading or the clearing right, the trading and the clearing right of recognized stock exchange, it is acquired by the right acquired by the person pursuant to the demonetization or corporation of a recognized stock exchange in India, which is referred to section 4730. Then the period for which the person was the member of recognized stock exchange immediately prior to the such demutualization or corporatization shall be included. Means the period for which such a person is the member of such a recognized stock exchange will also be included when we will calculate the holding period. Next, where equity share in the company allotted in the pursuant of demutualization, when the shares are allotted by the company in the pursuance of demutualization or corporation of the recognized stock exchange in India. To refer section 4730, we will discuss a section in our another class. Then the period for which the person was the member of such recognized stock exchange immediately prior to the demutualization or corporatization shall be included. Means the period for which such person was the member of such recognized stock exchange will also be considered when we will calculate the holding period. Next is where the unit of business trust which are allotted, the unit of the business trust allotted in the pursuance to transfer of share as referred in section 47 subsection 70 is that when the unit of business trust allotted in the pursuance to transfer of share in the transfer of share as referred to in section 47 subsection 70, then the holding period for which the shares held by the assessee shall be included. Then the period for which these shares are held by the assessee will also be included when we will calculate the holding period. Is that the period in which these shares are held by the assessee will also be included when we will calculate the holding period. Next, where units become the property of assessee in the consideration of transfer of units in the consolidated scheme of mutual fund, which is referred to in section 47 clause 80, when the unit becomes the property of the assessee. The units becomes the property of the assessee in the consideration of transfer of such a unit in the consolidated scheme of mutual fund, mutual funds, which is referred to in section 4780. So the period for which the units in the consolidating scheme of the mutual fund were held by the assessee shall be included. So the period for which the units in the considerating scheme will also be included. The period for which the unit in consolidating scheme of the mutual fund will also be included. Next, where share of the company is acquired by the non-resident assessee. When the share of the company is acquired by a non-resident person on the redemption of global depository receipt, means there is a non-resident assessee and he acquired a share of the company on the redemption of global depository receipt, which is referred to section 115 AC, clause subsection 1 clause B, which is held by the assessee. So the period from the date on which a request for such redemption was made shall be recorded. The period from the date when the request for the redemption made shall be recorded. Is that when there is a person who is a non-resident of India and he acquired the share and he acquired a share of the company on the redemption of global depository receipt. He received the share on the basis of or in the consideration of redemption of global depository receipt. Then the period from the date on which then the period from the date on which a request for such a redemption, a request for such a redemption was made shall be recorded. The such period shall be recorded. Next, where equity share of the company become the property of the assessee, where the equity share of the company becomes the property of the assessee by the way of conversion of preference share, by the way of conversion of preference share into the equity share, which is referred under section 47 10b, where the equity share of any company become the property, it becomes a property of the assessee by the way of conversion, by the way of conversion of preferential means there is the conversion of preferential and in the respect of or in the consideration of such conversion the company is providing the equity share, the company is providing the equity share. So the period for which such preference share held by the assessee will also be included, it will also be included. For the example, there is a shareholder, the name of the shareholder is Mohan. He has the shares of ABC company. He has the shares of ABC company and he has preference share. He has preference shares. Now there is the conversion. There is the conversion of preference shares into equity share. Into equity shares. So when we will calculate the holding period of such equity shares, then the period of then the period of preferential holding will also be considered. Will also be considered. Means if these shares are held by the assessee for 1st January 2000, then such period will also be considered when we will calculate the holding period of such equity share. Next, where units become the property of the assessee, when the units of any company becomes the property of the assessee in the consideration of transfer of unit, in the consideration of transfer of unit in the consolidated plan of the mutual fund scheme as per section 47 subsection 90, when the unit of any company become the assets of the assessee in the consideration of transfer of unit, in the consideration of transfer of unit in the consolidated plan of mutual fund, in the consolidated plan of mutual fund scheme. In this case, the period for which the units, in the case the period for which the units in the consolidating plan of the mutual fund which is held by the assessee will be included. The period for which these units, these mutual funds, means these units which is held in the mutual fund units will also be included. It will also be included. Next, where any specified security or the swept equity share which is allotted or transfer, where any specified security or swept equity share, where any specified security or swept equity shares are allotted or transferred directly or indirectly by the employer, free of cost or at concessional rate to his employee, where any specified security or sweat equity shares are allotted or transferred directly or indirectly by the employer, free of cost. or at the concessional rate to his employee. Then the period from the date of such allotment, then the period from the date of allotment or transfer of such specified security or sweat equity share shall be reckoned is that when there is any sweat equity share and these sweat equity share are transferred by the employer to the employee at free of cost. Then the period from the date of allotment or from the date of transfer of such specific security shall be reckoned. It shall be reckoned. So this these all are the provisions which are relating to the determination of holding period. Means what will be the holding period in different situation. Means when we will calculate the holding period, so what period will be considered or what period will not be considered. So this is the determination. This is the discussion on the determination of holding period. Now we will discuss some relevant points. Specified security. What is the meaning of specified security? What is the meaning of specified security? Specified security means the security which are defined in section 2H of the Security Contract Act 1915 1956. Specified security means the securities. The specified security means the security which are defined in section 2H of the Security Contract Act 1956 and where employee stock option has been granted under any plan or any scheme, then it includes the security which is offered under this plan or scheme. Is that the security which are defined under section 2 subsection H of the Security Contract Act, and if there is any employee stock option and the security which are provided under the employee stock option, then such security will be considered as specific security. What is the meaning of sweat equity share? What is the meaning of sweat equity share? Sweat equity share are those equity shares which are issued by the company or which is issued by the company to its employee, to its director at the discounted rate or for the consideration other than cash, for providing know-how or making available rights in the nature of intellectual property, right, or value addition as the case may be. Is that the sweat equity share are those equity shares which are issued by the or which are provided by the company to its employee, to its director at the discount rate or in the consideration of any know-how, providing any know-how or providing the right in the nature of intellectual property or any value addition means whatever name code. So these shares will be known as sweat equity share. So these shares will be known as sweat equity shares. Next, where a unit or units in the segregated portfolio referred under section 49 subsection 2AG, where the unit or the unit is a segregated portfolio referred under section 49 2AG, then the period for which the original unit then the period for which the original unit and the units in the main portfolio were held by the assessee shall also be recorded. The period for which the original unit and the units in the main portfolio were held by the assessee and it shall be recorded. Means such period shall be recorded. So on the basis of such discussion, we have complete the determination. We have complete the determination of holding period. Now, period of holding in the respect of other assets. Now we will discuss what will be the period of holding in the respect of other assets. Means the assets which are not defined in our previous discussion. Means what will be the period of holding if there is any other assets other than previous assets, other than those assets which are not other than those assets which are not defined by us in our previous discussion. The period for which any asset which is held by the assessee the holding period in the respect of those assets which are held by the assessee, then it shall be determined on the basis of rule which is made by CBDT. Is that if there is any assets which is held by the assessee, and in the respect of which there is no provision, or there is no provision in the respect of determination of holding, then the holding period in the respect of such asset shall be determined in the accordance with the rule which is made by the CBDT. So for the purpose of this, the CBDT insert rule 8 of the income tax rule in the income tax rule 1962, is that for the determination of holding period in the respect of capital assets other than capital assets which are determined in clause A 2 section 242A, is that for determining the holding period in the respect of other assets, the CBDT insert rule 8AA. The CBDT insert rule 8AA in the income tax rule 1962 so that the assessee can calculate the period of hold, so that the organization or the assessee can calculate the period of holding in the case of other assets, which are not covered by us in the previous table. So in the case of the capital assets, being a share or a debenture of the company, if there is a share and a debenture of any company which become the property of the assessee, in the circumstances which is mentioned in section 47 subsection 10, there shall be included the period for which bonds, debenture, debenture stock or the deposit certificate, as the case may be, was held by the assessee prior to the conversion. Means if there is any person, he has the shares and the debenture of any company. For the example, Mr. A, he has shares of ABC company. Now conversion made, and these shares are converted into debenture. These shares are converted into the debentures. So when we will calculate the holding period, for the example, these shares are held by the person from 1st January 2018, and the conversion taken place 31st December 2020. So these two periods means, for when we calculate holding period, the period from 1st January 2018 to 31st December 2020 will be included. It will be included when we will calculate the holding period. So when in the case of any share and debenture of any company which become the property of the assessee in the circumstances of conversion, then the period of these shares means the shares which is held, and after the conversion it is converted into the debenture, then the period of holding of these shares will also be included when we will calculate the holding period. Note section 47 subsection 10. Section 47 subsection 10 provide that if there is any transfer which is made by the way of bonds, by the way of conversion of bonds or debenture, when there is any transfer which is made by the way of conversion of bonds or debentures or debenture stock or debentures or deposit certificate in any form of a company into the share or a debenture of that company, then it shall not be treated as transfer for the purpose of levying of Leaving of capital gain is that when there is a conversion of bonds or debenture into the shares and the debenture of such company, then it will not be considered as transfer. It will not be considered as transfer, and the provision of the capital gain will not be arise. The provision of the capital gain will not be arise. Just like same situation, there is the shares are converted into the debentures, or there are a debentures and converted into the share. Then such conversion will not be considered as transfer. Such conversion will not be considered as transfer, and the provision of capital gain will not be arise, because the provision of the capital gain will be arise when there is a transfer of any capital asset. When it will not be considered as transfer, so the provision of capital gain will not be calculated. Sorry, will not be determined. So, in the case of capital assets declared under the income declaration scheme, is that if there is any capital, which if there is any asset which is considered by the assessee as a capital assets under the income declaration scheme, 2016. So, in this case, what will be the holding period? If there is a immovable property, in the case of any immovable property, if there is a immovable property and such immovable property is declared by the assessee in the or under the income declaration scheme 2016, then the period for which the property is held shall be reckoned from the date on which the property is required, if the date of acquisition is evidenced by the deed registered with any authority of the state government. Is that if there is a immovable property, then in the case of such immovable property, the period for which such property is held, the period for which such property is held shall be reckoned. The period for which the property is held shall be reckoned from the date on which such property is acquired. Means the period shall be reckoned from the date on which such property is acquired. If the date of conversion, if the date of acquisition of such property is evidenced by the registered deed. In other case, the property for which such assets is held shall be reckoned from 1st June 2016. In the other case, or in the other assets, the property for which the assets is held shall be reckoned from 1st June 2016. So this is a determination of holding period in the case of when the property or when the capital assets declared under the income declaration scheme 2016. So on the basis of such a discussion, we have covered some basic concept. which are relating to the capital gain chapter. The knowledge and the understanding about these basic concepts is a very much important, so that you can properly understand each and every concept and the section of such topic. There are some other classes of capital gain in which we will discuss the how to calculate the capital gain, which will be taxable under the head of capital gain, and what are the exemptions. Means if you invest the amount of capital gain in a specified security or in a specified things, then you will be eligible to take the deduction, and other provisions of capital gain. So kindly consider all the videos of such topics so that you can properly understand each and every concept or each and every sections of capital gain. Thank you so much for watching this video. Okay, bye bye and have a nice day.